Well, good morning. Thank you for being here. Thank you to the organizers for letting us speak this wonderful audience and to have this opportunity. In Granada, we've been following a different approach to the same research that our Italian colleagues. We were not able to establish the whole population of Romanian Roma in Spain. We gave up. That was not accurate. We follow a different pattern. We establish household and family networks, localized. So we try to, it's moving alone. Anyway, we thought that the first we could have access to some groups and some families and some people, and if we ask them slowly to tell us why is this moving? Has its own life. Well, anyway, we try to know everybody from the same network that was residing in the area where we work, which was basically Andalusia. So it was Granada, Seville, some towns of Córdoba, and Malaga. And we were very exhaustive. We tried to fill all the gaps, and it was a long process. And finally, we're relatively satisfied that we know all the relatives that are in the same area. So we constructed 7 major networks, and from them we got a big sample, and we proceed to know those families, households, and people the best we could. Those are networks that are embedded in larger transnational social fields. They have family, other household friends, both in Romania. Okay, I'm going to be fighting with this. So, they communicate with them all the time. So today, their presence and distance has relatively disappeared. Basically, from using this basic sample, we were able, which is varied, comes from at least 5 different groups and different regions in Romania. I'm not going to stop in this because all this is published. You can find it in the MICROM webpage, and I want to do something else today. Anyway, we have a study sample, and we were able to establish the population structure. We were able to go deep into studying demographic processes, population structure, fertility, and also their productive strategy, their income generating strategies. For instance, it was very interesting, the work we did, but let's see when we publish on that, on recycling by rural populations from Romania working in Granada, in Seville, and in other areas. But today, I want to talk about something else. And I'm not going to use this very much. What we've discovered is something that is evident. Some of the most important changes affecting Roma communities everywhere are demographic. Reproductive strategies, particularly, and their underlying family and gender institutions, are the foundation of the social organization. Fuck, it doesn't obey. What can I do to keep it?
What you can do is you can take it out of slide mode and we'll just show it one by one.
We were here. Some of the most important transformations experienced by Romani groups in the last 50 years have been demographic. For instance, the decline of infant mortality and child mortality. You might not think about this, but Roma children have been dying in droves until relatively recent. I mean, you would say, well, and non-Roma children too. Yeah, but there's a difference, and it's a delay, and there's a difference in size. And we don't know much about that. And that affects the life of people, especially their mothers and their outlooks. Reproductive strategies, including, of course, death, and their underlying family and gender institutions are at the foundation of the social organization and the cultural expression of Roma groups everywhere. It's surprising that with a few important exceptions, like the work of Durst, which is with us, the subject of human reproduction has been long neglected in Romani studies and cultural anthropology in general. So we've tried to make this one of the focus of scholarly inquiry in the Migron project. It's been difficult, it's taking a lot of time, and we are not interested in demography for demographers. We're ethnographers. In fact, today I decided I was going to change the presentation because it's too demographic and it gives the wrong impression of our work. And second, because I've already said that and I got the impression that I'm repeating myself. So we're going to be back to this, but let's change and let's move into one of those 120 stories we have collected, obviously not all of them with this depth. I'm going to tell you about Marza's story. She's a very good friend. We've known each other for 3 years. I think we're kind of confident, but you would say, how on earth you dare, a male, to talk about what a Roma woman is looking for, is striving for. Well, anyway, let's see the story. 4 months into her third pregnancy, Marza, a 26-year-old Romanian Roma from Timișoara, went to her gynecologist in the Seville Health Center near her flat. She was going to have an ultrasound that will tell her the sex of her new child. By the way, I changed this tonight. I wasn't planning to do this. My colleagues are not responsible, and it might include some grammar errors, so forgive me. I'm doing my best, but for the British it's not enough. They're leaving us, but it's a great effort. Anyway, she went there with her husband, and they already had 2 daughters and dreamed of having a son. They were very anxious and did not understand why the doctor smiled when he looked into the black and white screen. It's a female, he said, pointing to something in the picture. Marza broke down in tears. Rupa was furious and left the room. I talked to Rupa a couple of hours later, and I found him very distressed, almost desperate. He was filled with an intense sense of failure, more or less like myself, concerning papers in this project. He even doubted that life had any meaning for him anymore. Why am I in this world? What have I achieved? What will I leave behind? I tried to console him and tell him, but you're still young, you're 26. Yes, he said, we'll try again in a few years when the girls are bigger. Now he has 3 children, no job, no house, etc. This turning of events will have consequences for the family planning of this Roma couple that perhaps the doctor had not envisioned with all this joking. Marza and Rupa may have been content with 3 children if the coming one was a son. Now they know they will have to try to have more children in the incoming years. Ignoring that is terrible in family planning. When I talked to Marza about what happened in that day, she told me that she thought all might have been a joke by the doctor. He kept smiling and looking strangely into the nurse, also present in the room. When he saw her crying, he told her she was exaggerating. The key thing was the health of the new baby, not the sex, he repeated. He could not understand why that was so important to them. Marza tried to explain to him that in her world, girls marry and leave the family, while sons stay with their parents and bring their wives home. Without sons, you're alone in your old age, and you don't see your grandchildren grow. With daughters, the name is lost, the descent is weakened. You raise your daughters for the sake of other families. That is why she felt so ashamed. There was something wrong inside her, as her Socra kept telling her, as she could only bear females. The doctor told me that I was completely wrong. It was the other way around. It's my husband, seed, that plants boys or girls in me, she explained me. So that was she gathered from what the doctor told her. When Rupa returned to the room and started to scream at her, she told him what the doctor just said. and Rupa shut up, and shut up forever about this point, as long as I know. Marza was born in a Corturare family in Timișoara. When she was 11, she moved with her parents to the outskirts of Murcia, a city in southeastern Spain. Amazingly, the father did well, but in a kind of an illegal or semi-legal job. So he was expelled, and they went from Romania to Malaysia, and then back to Spain. And now their parents are in Germany. That's why we're talking about transnational stories, because they're really transnational. At 18, Marza was given in marriage to his 17-year-old first cousin, Rupa, whom she barely knew. It was an arranged surprise marriage. Marza and Rupa had met several times since they were children, but none of them thought of the other as a potential spouse. The parents arranged the marriage. Rupa was distressed and cried during the wedding. He didn't like Marza at the time, although today he's deeply in love with her. Marza accepted her parents' decisions obediently. Rupa and his family come from a town in the region of Cluj in Transylvania. The mother of Rupa and the mother of Marza are sisters. Rupa arrived in Sevilla at 12 with his widowed mother and his brothers and sisters. Some of the names and conditions, obviously, they're all synonyms, and some of the particular cities have been changed. His three sisters married and moved with their husbands to Murcia, to London, and to Cork. So the daughters are spread in Europe, while the brothers remain together in the same neighborhood for over 15 years. Although, as Stefania said, they all dream to come back to their place in Romania and to have a house there. To have a house back in town is the dream, is the duty to prove that they're done well in migration. Rupa was a good student and a brilliant soccer player. At 17, he had become a popular and attractive boy in Seville, with lots of friends from the high school he attended for over 4 years. He was secretly dating Spanish girls. When her mother knew about that, she married him in a week. She liked Marza, her niece. She seemed a nice, reserved, and decent girl of whom nobody has ever talked. That's a virtue. That's very good. In less than a month, the Mangaimo, it should be the other way around, sorry. Mangaimo should be in italics, had been performed. Marza had become her Bori and was living in her house with her sons and the other daughters-in-law. 11 months into their marriage, they had the first child, a daughter. Everybody was pleased. Martha was a real woman. The pressure to have a child after marriage is one of those foundations, institutional foundations of fertility transitions among Roma. Catalina Tessar has proven that in the group she studied, and it's very common. We all more or less know. But for the next 6 years, Rupa and Marza had no more children. And in this case, it was mostly Rupa agency. Also, Marza was nursing, and she was also content not to have kids so quickly after the first one. This is, in demographic terms, spacing. It's a whole strategy. By early 2014, Marza was pregnant again, so 6 years after the first child. Rupa would have preferred to wait even longer, but Marza wanted a second child. She confessed me later that she felt pressed by the in-laws who were gossiping about her as the time passed by. What is wrong with you? Why are you not having more kids? Rupa loved his daughter tenderly. He says, I would not change her for nothing in the world. But a son, however, will complete his family and assure the future of the household. They were very disappointed when a second daughter was born. The baby was born following a complicated delivery by cesarean section, and both Marza's and life and that of the child were at risk. And so they were subject to the Spanish health system. And we interviewed them of how things have gone, how had they been treated, if there was any discrimination, or what they felt. So any single story like this offers you a lot of perspectives into not only family life, but how family life is nested in a lot of influences in the local society and also in the Spanish society at large, or in the UK and back in Romania. 1 year later, the doctors told her, you shouldn't have a child in 2 years, and put her on the pill, on the pill. 1 year later, however, she discovered she was pregnant again. It was a blow to both spouses and to their families. It happens during the past Christmas season, and on several nights they had been so happy together, that's what they told me, and they drank a bit too much. So maybe she forgot to take the pill. Both felt desolated. It's not what they wanted. It was an unwanted pregnancy. And everybody around them scolded them, reprimanded them. And first, the sogra, the central female figure in the life of a young woman, young married woman. She was a strong-willed woman that was widowed very young. And Rupa, remember, she almost hit me. She told me, you're stupid, you're irresponsible, bringing another child to this world. You don't have a house, you don't have employment, you don't even have a house in Romania. And everybody was a bit upset, like his older brother, who's kind of a fatherly figure, and the oldest Bori, his wife, and also the sogra was mad with the Bori. And this is interesting, this exchange. She was furious, says Marta. She was saying, I was crazy. It was crazy for us to have another baby. And I felt very ashamed when she shouted me. In one of those rows, the eldest Bori, Daleda, told Marta, why didn't you tell her that she has had 8 children? How on earth she could blame you for having 3? And Marta replied that she would have never done that. She has never asked back to her sogra, although they've been very, very bad times in the first years of her marriage. Besides, I knew she was right. I knew what she's saying was the best for us. Let's stop here and let's recapitulate a bit. This small story encapsulates many of the qualms, queries, efforts, and expectations that young Roma women, in this case a corturare from Banat, and there are differences between different groups, so this has to be qualified, but there are some things that are common. They have a lot of pressures and a lot of expectations they have to confront, negotiate, and endure in the process of having the families they would like to have. But there are things that are important. Number one, birth is already a matter of personal decision. In terms of demographic, in demographic terms, which I didn't want to use completely, but we can come back if there are questions, they're in the middle of their fertility transition. And, but their institutions, the institutional base of that process is completely different to the doctor that we're talking to. They're not postponing. Postponement is the key word now in Europe. Women are having children at 30s. In Romania, 26. In Spain, 31. It's a big difference between Romania and Spain in terms of the age at birth, at first birth, but the Roma are having children in our sample at 17 on average. Some are 14, some are 22. So 17. That's a complete different world. Second, usually the starting of fertility transition is portrayed as the triumph of individualism over the constraints and pressures of tradition. Here, it's not only Marta that thinks that she should control birth, she should use birth control, it's also the sogra. So we're attesting a cultural change. a mentality change, a completely different approach. But it's so different to the one that is dominant in Spain than the clash between agencies, like in this case, health agencies, well intended, but with their own priorities, that is almost inevitable, at least in two major ways, in two major aspects. One is the youth, the timing. It's like if they were living in different speeds. The dominant tapes goes in one rhythm, and the Roma goes in a much faster rhythm. And second, population growth. High fertility, young, early, arranged marriages followed by pregnancies, which is what is expected, have the chance of generate larger offsprings and population growth. Aging populations that are declining don't look at growing Roma populations as a blessing. On the contrary, they think it's something very bad, especially in Romania, Bulgaria, those countries that are in the midst of a difficult demographic winter that is very often used by nationalist and populist discourses. So the Gypsies are a great, well, the Roma are a great target, just in pure demographic terms. So I stop, and any question?
Thank you, excellent. Thank you so much.